Welcome, everyone, to today's installment of Mentorship Mike. We'd like to welcome Bernadette Rivero. Bernadette, welcome in.
Hi there, John. Really, really great to see you and talk today.
Good to see you. And before I give your bio, I've got to ask, look at what's behind you. There's got to be a story there with all the musical instruments. Just give us a brief overview.
It started with no one in my family really played music at the start, but my husband always wanted a piano in the house. So we had a piano, and then everyone, which you're not seeing on screen, and then everyone decided, oh, this is obviously a musical family. We don't want this guitar or this violin or this musical instrument anymore. We should give it to the Riveros. So now we have this collection that makes us look like professional musicians. And along the way, the children and I have picked up musical activities. So I have one who's played the violin, one plays the drums. There's a full drum set. She had a little drum gig. She's 9 last weekend
Wow.
and plays the piano, and another picked up the flute this week. So we sort of stumbled into looking the part after having had all the parts.
Yes, incredible. Well, good. What a talented family. What a talented family. I'm going to read your bio. I'll be honest, when I did the research for this, I've known you, I guess, for about a year now. We worked on a project together, and some of the things that I uncovered about you, I had no idea. So we're going to talk about those a little bit and just show the multiple talents that you have and what you've done in your life.
All right.
Bernadette Rivero is a Los Angeles-based producer, writer, and co-founder of the Cortez Brothers, Inc., a global creative production company representing directors and media professionals worldwide. Before launching the company with her husband, Ed, who we heard about just previously, she built her storytelling foundation in broadcast journalism at CNN International, NPR, and Marketplace Morning Report. She also chased hurricanes as a one-woman band at the Weather Channel. Now, we've got to talk about that. A Rotary ambassadorial scholar, she has produced across commercials, branded content, TV series, documentaries, and feature films for clients including Disney, Paramount, NBC, PBS, Adidas, and IKEA, with a driving commitment to elevating women and underrepresented voices in the industry. And let me tell you, of all the things I just said about you, I love that last sentence, that last little clip the most. Love that you elevate women, underrepresented voices, and what you do in that area. So thank you.
Thanks. And thanks for the shout out about the hurricanes. That was, well, other natural disasters. That was a very, very fun time in my
Yes,
early career.
incredible. Well, let's start with your occupational journey, right? Where you've worked. We talked a little bit about those places, what you've done, etc. And when you're talking about your journey, maybe throw in any mentors that come to mind, how they influenced you, what they did. Because again, in faith and media, you are actually a mentor for some of our students right now. You're doing a great job and we get great feedback. But that is important. That's an important aspect as we mentor people through our efforts. So start with your journey.
Oh my gosh, I started working really early because I wanted to save for college. I was working at a grocery store when I was 14. My English teacher at high school at the time, Mrs. Mary Batterson, was just horrified that I was working in a grocery store and on my feet until, 10 or 11 at night. I loved having a job, by the way. And she wrangled a job for me at a store for the home called Jacobson's, which was sort of a Macy's for the Midwest. And it was sort of a high-end clothing store that had an interior advertising agency inside of it that was so old school that some of the artists were still drawing ads by hand in some of the fashion, with pen and ink. And we had a dark room, and I just loved working there because I got to have a drawer to put my stuff in, and I got to work on computers, and I was the assistant to a woman who became a very influential, mentor in my life, Edie Rosenfeld. And Edie was working in the marketing department at the time and taught me everything I knew about targeted marketing of very specific populations. So we, at the time, were setting up stores and selling things like fur coats and, crystal to the 1% of the world. And so my job was to go line by line through zip codes and sort of look for what parts of the Western seaboard had Eastern seaboard had places that they could potentially set up stores. And at 14, 15, 16 years old, working there and sort of diving that deeply into marketing, and having to be very precise was something I loved. But Edie was a huge mentor for me in so many ways. She, put up with me as a teenager showing up to these jobs at a place where I had to help prepare for Hanukkah sales in the summer. And I was showing up in a Catholic school uniform with knee socks and, plaid skirt. And Edie was, as she told it, she was the last child handed through the last window of the last Kindertransport train out of Austria before it fell to the Nazis. So to say that there was, sort of an interfaith mentorship that began early in my career is an understatement by far. But in addition to teaching me lots about being very precise and creative at the same time in advertising and marketing, she also opened up a world to me, she and her husband, Dick Rosenfeld, with introducing me to the Rotary. And the Rotary was what sort of set me on a journey to see the world beyond, my small town and think of the world in global terms. So from there, I got a degree in writing from St. Mary's College in Notre Dame, Indiana. So a very deep focus on liberal arts. And I had set out with my Rotary scholarship to go get a degree in, I wanted to start working on a master's and then eventually a doctorate someday in literature of the Americas, literature of the conquest. And sort of life intervened, and there were some, the beginnings of strikes that were happening at the universities in Mexico at the time that I was studying there. And I ended up interning at CNN instead because I had to fulfill a year worth of studies in Mexico as part of the terms of my scholarship. And I just was running out of things to do. And I thought, I worked on my college newspaper. I'm sure I can just call up CNN cold and see if they have a space for me. And they did. And that just sort of tumbled me down into this world of content production that lasted for years. So since then, I've always just sort of towed a line between advertising, production, content, but never really lost sight of there's a project that needs to get done. All hands on deck. Let's get it done. Let's get it out the door.
Incredible. Incredible. Yes. What a great journey, and gosh, incredible mentors too. So I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact about faith and media and their intersection. Let's talk about that. Your faith tradition, how it's helped influence you, how it's influenced your work day to day. Some of those examples you might have. Just talk about that in general terms for us.
I'm Roman Catholic, cradle-Catholic, come from a family that's been Catholic for many generations, even though we have people of other faith backgrounds in our own family. And I grew up going, like my father did, like many members of my family did before me, Catholic schools. Most of my children have been through Catholic schools at one point or another. I decided to go to a Catholic college because I hadn't had enough. And so I've done many, many, many years of Catholic schooling. And in terms of my work, I mean, it feels like it's woven into my life at this point. I fell away from the Catholic Church for many years, came back, and it feels like an integral part of who I am. I feel like with my name, Bernadette, I don't feel like I need to announce that I'm Catholic. You're either going to presume that my family were huge fans of Broadway and
Yes.
musicals. So shout out to Bernadette Peters there, and or Catholic. So
Yeah.
it's just a part of who I am. I've had, the luck to work on projects through the years that might have a little bit of faith elements in them, but mostly it's just something, I am and how I go through life and, the lens through which I see things.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. A lot of people that I speak to, your personal DNA, it's hard to extract that from what you do day to day in your work, right? The reliability, the integrity, the work ethic, the honesty, all of that comes together. So yeah, I could totally see that. And working with you, I can personally vouch for that too. I would love to get your thoughts. There's no right or wrong answer, it's total opinion, but what faith in media looks like today. And when I say media, it's this big overarching thing. So you can define media however you want, right? But what do you feel the intersection of faith and media today and how faith is represented in media? what that looks like today, just your personal observations.
In terms of working on a day-to-day basis in physical production, in what is known as Hollywood out here in Los Angeles, it's rare that I bump into people of faith simply because I think we're on the move a lot. I've met a few other families, a few other individuals through my local church, through some organizations in town, but I've seen a hunger, I think, for good stories that transcends everyone's faith background, which I like. I feel like there's a human need in everyone to see more of themselves in media. And I don't see a lot of stories where faith is front and center. And I enjoy the ones that I do, the ones that sneak through. When I think of, production behind the scenes and with who I'm speaking with, it's always such a delight to bump into someone who's, openly professes their faith, or even those that quietly profess their faith, but just truly believe in it and live it. And so there's sort of nice surprises. On TV, in movies, I sort of feel the same way about faith that I do about Latinos in entertainment. It's like there's so many opportunities there that are being missed. There's so many stories that I would love to see that I'm not seeing, and the ones that sneak through are like little pearls that you have to learn from. But I see so much of a parallel in the opportunity for more Latino stories and the opportunity and hunger for more stories about faith that really gets it right. There's a lot that get it wrong, but the ones that do well are just so enjoyable to see when they happen.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Good call. And it's interesting, as I know, faith-infused media in mainstream media versus the faith genre. It's important that, like you said, we all have a human need to see ourselves reflected on the big screen or in print or something. And so that's really important. Let's transition now to what I call micro-musings, right? We'll just have a 15 to 30-second call and response. Some of these might require more than that, so take the time you need. But I just want to keep this kind of clipping along and get your quick thoughts on this. One word that describes your producing style.
Flexible.
Okay. Okay. Go into that a little bit more. I'm interested in that response.
There's no way to predict what one day to the next is going to be like. There's absolutely no ability to judge what tomorrow is going to look like. I kind of know when my upcoming shoot days are, but they're going to change. It was something I learned working in journalism. You would think you were covering a hurricane in one country, and the hurricane had other plans, and the next thing you know, you're jumping a border and going to the next place. And that's never changed in all the time I've done this. So even now, there's flexibility in finding the right director for a project, flexibility in finding the right place to shoot it with the right team to shoot it, flexibility in a calendar that is never, ever able to be predicted. One of the one of the biggest sticking points in my life right now is I have to figure out how to get to Utah for the BYU versus Notre Dame game. And
Yes.
I've had to let everybody know around me, like, I don't care what's happening with production. That one day is locked in. And there's probably only 4 or 5 days in a given year that I can lock in a date, and everything else around it, all of the work, all of the lifestyle stuff, everything just kind of has to be flexible around it. So I'd say I'm a pretty flexible producer, like almost all of the other producers that I know.
Yeah. Very great answer. Great answer. And let's talk offline about that game. I've got some thoughts. Okay. Let's go back. CNN, NPR, Weather Channel. Which one taught you the most, would you say, and why?
It sort of leveled up with each one. CNN taught me the importance of accuracy and delivering on time. So today, I'm proud to say we don't miss deadlines. As a production company, as a person, if it's not in early, then it's late. So that was ingrained into me working there. Working at NPR taught me the importance of voice in a literal sense and a metaphorical sense, protect the voice, and then add layers to the stories that you're telling. We had a little bit more time and space in any of the NPR, places that I worked to tell stories that had some richness and some depth to it. And so that sort of sense of narrative storytelling definitely carried into what I do today. And then Weather Channel taught me that you are relying on a team at all times. The only reason I was able to go in as a one-man band, as a one-woman band to, be in a hurricane hunting plane or pierce the inner sanctum of a hurricane or, follow hurricanes, earthquakes, mudslides was because other people were working in conjunction to help me do my job and vice versa. So relying on scientists, on other producers, on people that are going to help you move forward with the story that you're telling. And I think every single one of those elements and places made it into what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Incredible. Good. Great response. I want to double click a little bit on something I shared during your bio, the representation piece. What made it a business priority and not just a personal value, trying to elevate Latino and female and women's voices, that type of thing? What drew you to that?
As a kid, I never saw anybody on television that looked remotely like myself, like anyone in my family. Sort of Maria on Sesame Street for many, many years was the only thing that I had, the only person that I had to look at. And I never lost that sense of where's more of the people I love and the people that look like me and the stories that I want to see. And so when my husband and I set out, sort of to share our lives together, we talked about that a lot. He's from a Cuban-American background and rarely saw representations of his family on TV. His Maria on Sesame Street was a PBS program called Que Pasa USA back locally that was about a Cuban-American family adjusting to life in the U.S., and it was in Spanish and English and Spanglish. And so when we started working together in the industry, as we were kind of figuring out life in Los Angeles, we noticed that the stories we wanted to tell and the people we wanted to see weren't there. And we thought about setting out a shingle of our own. At the time, he was working at the advertising side of Ridley and Tony Scott's company, and I was working at the film and TV side, trying to figure out life, just reading screenplays and making terrible pots of coffee, and much better at the screenplay reading than the coffee making. And we would come home at night and discuss, like, what could we do to put other voices that we know and the directors that we work with into the position of being able to direct things and produce things that they love. And the company sort of grew from there. And we started out with a lot of Latino filmmakers. And then through the years, we started attracting people that were just part of our community, regardless of their background, and built a company that way. And it began with the desire to offer a little more space to people that didn't have space. And then it grew into a place where we kind of started shining a light that attracted people that like good cinematic stories and thoughtful productions.
Incredible. Well, kudos to both of you. That I absolutely, like I said, I love, love, love that you guys do that. Bernadette, give us a moment, whether it's on set or in an edit bay, maybe on location, on the set, where you thought, this is why I do this work.
There's this time that comes when we're working with directors, and they range from directors that have been working for a long time and are sort of very set in their careers in their style to directors that are figuring things out or making transitions. And then occasionally directors that we build that are at the beginning of their careers. And they can be any age possible, but the age of their creativity is still developing. And there comes a time when those directors who are working day jobs, they are working inside camera houses, or they're, working at a desk job, or they're just trying to make that scary leap to being a filmmaker with a capital F. And they manage to produce something with us, and they are able to quit their day job that feels so good.
Yes.
And you see them start down this path towards really becoming a creative in a true sense of the world. And we lose some of our directors because they will stop doing advertising or branded content, and they go out into the big world of feature filmmaking or television, and we say goodbye forever. And it's sort of bittersweet, but it feels so good when there comes that first day when they quit the job. They quit the day job to do the filmmaking full time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Incredible. Incredible. Okay. I'm going to ask you to look into the crystal ball. Go ahead, let's say 10 years in the industry. What stays the same, or what is consistent, and what changes?
I hope I'm still working with directors. I really truly enjoy the process. I've worked with directors as a ghostwriter. I've worked with directors as a producer. I've worked with directors just, sitting down and talking about their careers and kind of figuring out next steps. And I love all of it. I like looking at directors' work, at their reels, trying to figure out how they might fit into our, Cortez Brothers world, or, just sort of where they might be going with their life. I like reading their stuff. So I hope that stays the same. I'd love to be doing more scripted and narrative work. So I've worked across feature films, television, commercials, documentaries. And what I really love is when someone comes to me with a project I didn't see coming that needs some sort of narrative elements in it. And I either help with the story, crafting the story, or, building something unexpected. And I love those. So I hope a few more of those, find their way to me. 10 years from now.
Okay, great, great, great. All right, I'm going to give you the rest of the time together. I want you to focus on a few things, though, if you can. What pieces of advice would you have to 20 somethings that are entering the industry? When we talked about this before, yeah, what would you tell a child, your child, or the 22, 24-year-old Bernadette if she were heading to Hollywood or Atlanta or any place that hosts the industry now? What do they need to know? And what would you say they need to be prepared for?
Flexibility and adaptability is key. I have been giving this advice to my own children and to also the people that I've been mentoring, trying to enter and find their way through the industry, is be prepared to work multiple jobs. I think as a person who didn't set out to work in the entertainment industry, to work in Hollywood, I thought, you're a filmmaker and that's it. And it wasn't until I moved to Los Angeles that I realized, hey, everybody's working multiple jobs all the time for a reason. And so, the running joke is that your actor is also a barista, but guess what? Your editor is also driving an Uber, and your Uber driver is also reading sides as a commercial actor. And your commercial director is also working as a colorist, and your colorist is probably also doing 3 or 4 different things. So I had chosen a liberal arts college on purpose. The women's college that I went to, University of Notre Dame, these are St. Mary's College, these are liberal arts schools. So when you're studying math, you're also studying history at the same time. And in your history classes, you're studying science. And in your science, you're learning to write. So it was very interdisciplinary. It was expected of us at all times that we had to be good writers and good thinkers and good doers simultaneously and keep an eye on the classics, but also, look towards the future. So when I entered the workspace, I was prepared to be juggling multiple hats all at once. And I feel like people that think they're going to come to Hollywood and find a job and they're going to find stability are looking in the wrong, industry. If, however, you can do multiple things at once, any aspect of the content production world, regardless of the city you're in, whether you find yourself in New York or Buenos Aires or Mexico or LA or Atlanta or Chicago or Salt Lake City or Miami or any of these places where you can find a filmmaking community, a content making community, as long as you understand that you are going to have to wear multiple hats and juggle multiple plates simultaneously, you will never be let down.
Well said. Well said. Incredible. Bernadette, thank you so much. These have been gems of wisdom all the way around. And we sure appreciate you joining us on Mentorship, Mike.
A pleasure. Really, really great to have an opportunity to talk with you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.